Yo, what's good with y'all boys, man? Today we got another banger video. We got when you grow too tall to play basketball, man. Now, the only reason I I would think you can't play basketball when you're at a certain height is because your bones they be hurting, or you're too, teams won't sign you because you're too light in the post. You gotta have some strength on you. But hey, man, let's find out.
Is Robert Wadlow, and he was the tallest man in recorded history, standing at a whopping 8 feet 11 inches tall. A man so large he looked like two people stacked on top of each other in a trench coat. But even then, you'd still have to give them a pair of stilts to stack up to Robert. When he entered middle school, he was already a 7-footer, and by the time he graduated high school, the kid was a staggering 8 feet 4 inches tall. And just as odd as his unbelievable height was the fact he was already a 7-footer, and by the time he graduated high school, the kid was a staggering 8 feet 4 inches tall. And just as odd as his unbelievable height was the fact that he just wouldn't stop growing, even well into adulthood. Robert's height and daily life is incredibly fascinating in and of itself, but being a basketball fan, the only thing that I can think about when I see film of this gentle giant peering out 3 feet over a sea of people flocking to see him, this man would have been one hell of a ball player. Standing just 1 foot shorter than the rim itself, give the kid a pair of sneakers, plant him underneath the rim, and watch as the defense stands by, helplessly witnessing the dominance of a man too big to do absolutely anything about. If Robert played basketball, and if you could just get him within reaching distance of the hoop, I fail to see any way that you could prevent him from just dropping the ball in the hoop every single time. Which begs the question, why don't teams do this? Why are teams around the NBA not scouting the tallest people on the planet, slapping a uniform on them, and planting them under the hoop for the easiest buckets you've ever seen in your life? Well, because teams have tried this. Actually, they've tried it a lot. And it turns out you can actually be too tall to play basketball. Today's video is sponsored by SeatGeek. With the NBA season just a couple weeks away, check out SeatGeek to get your tickets for NBA Tip-Off, the #1 rated ticketing app with over 28 million downloads. On SeatGeek, there are more than 70,000 listed events, from sports to concerts to festivals and more. For years now, I've been exclusively using SeatGeek to find the best tickets for everything, including my Blazers, where I can browse seating, search for tickets, and get the best deals. And with every ticket backed by their buyer guarantee, once I buy my ticket, I know I'm good to go. And right now, you can get 10% off any tickets by downloading the SeatGeek app and using the promo code Jimmy10. Just click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account to use at any time. That's promo code Jimmy10 for 10% off any tickets, only on SeatGeek. Can you be too tall to play basketball? Well, the NBA, as well as every other league around the world, has no actual limit to how tall a player can be. The tallest player in NBA history is a record tied between Manute Bol and George Muresan, both 7'7" giants and taller than any player currently in the league. But they weren't nearly the tallest people on Earth. In fact, they weren't even the tallest basketball players in history. There's 7'8" Yasutaka Okayama, drafted into the NBA in 1981 but never played a game in the league. 7'9" Sun Ming, 7'9" Olivier Roux, 7'11" Abidun Adegoke. There are taller people and taller players out there. So in a sport where size grants the ultimate advantage, why does there seem to be a limit to how tall players can be in the NBA? If taller players exist, why are they of no use to the best league in the world? To answer this question, we first need to understand just how big a human being can get, and the tipping point where too much size does more harm than good. At the moment, the tallest player in the NBA is Victor Wembanyama, who was officially measured at 7'3" coming into the NBA a couple years ago, but was recently changed to an official height of 7'4". But even his new listed height seems to be an underestimation. In every photo, compared to other players from around the league and their listed heights, fans have speculated that Wemby is clearly taller than they are listing him. For example, here is 6'11" Tim Duncan. Here's 60-year-old 7'1" David Robinson. Might be a little bit of shrinkage going on there, but still a 7-footer. Here's 6'6" Stephon Castle, and here's Victor Wembanyama. I mean, Here's Victor Wembanyama.
Damn,
After crunching
bro.
some numbers, it's estimated that Wemby is closer to 7'6" or even 7'7", and according to the Spurs team staff, he's still growing. Now, if Wemby is truly 7 feet 6 inches tall, that would make him the 34th tallest human being on the planet. So, where are the other 33 guys that are taller than him, and why are they not in the NBA? Well, because they are simply too tall. 8'3", 8'1", 8'1", 7'11", 8'1", 7'11". All of these men have a few things in common. They're all incredibly tall, obviously. None of them play sports, and they all suffer from genetic disorders that made them as tall as they are. No human has ever naturally grown to this size. Instead, the supersized stature of these individuals is due to a rare disorder called gigantism, a condition where the body produces excessive growth hormone, leading to abnormal and excessive height. But the result of this condition is not just extreme size, but a laundry list of medical issues that almost always accompany it. Spinal pain, joint pain, sleep apnea, carpal tunnel, cardiovascular and respiratory issues, insulin resistance, and even neurological conditions. In the cases of these rare individuals, they become so big that their body has trouble even functioning and completing normal everyday tasks, let alone pursuing a career in athletics. Although, there is one exception. Sort of. 8'1" Iranian volleyball player Martiza Mirzai, who has had a decorated career on the world stage.
He's 8'1" playing volleyball, bro. What?
And is currently the tallest athlete on the planet, which would make him the exception to the rule if he didn't compete sitting down. The results of an accident that he had when he was a teenager that stopped the growth of one of his legs while the other leg kept growing, a disability that indirectly stemmed from his incessant growth. There aren't many people around the world who are tall enough to be an actual cheat code in sports. And in the extremely rare cases that they are, sports are simply out of the question. Although there isn't a limit to how tall you can be to play basketball, there does seem to be a theoretical limit to how tall a person can be before they have a hard time just functioning. And this limit seems to be about 7'8". Beyond this, there are just a handful of human beings on record to live relatively normal lives without dealing with severe debilitations as a result of their immense size. The human body just isn't meant to be bigger than this. In fact, every single instance of a person growing taller than 7'9" was a result of a genetic disorder. The tallest man in recorded history whose height didn't stem from any pathological condition or excessive growth hormone production is actually, believe it or not, playing basketball right now.
Whoa.
Standing at 7 feet 9 inches tall, 19-year-old Olivier Roux is pushing the boundaries of not just how tall a basketball player can be, but how tall a human being can get while still maintaining their mobility, dexterity, and health. Even crazier, the kid is still growing and still pursuing a career in the NBA. But he would be the first person to cross this hypothetical size limit and make it to the league. Because as much as height plays possibly the biggest role in the game of basketball, too much of it can end up being a curse. Back in 2007, in a game that was openly advertised as a publicity stunt, the Maryland Nighthawks of the ABA had the bright idea to start the game with a 5-man lineup that had an average height of 7'3". How did they possibly manage to do this? By starting the
lineup, bro.
Second tallest basketball player ever at 7'9" as their center, the tallest NBA player ever at 7'7" as their power forward, 2 7-footers as their small forward and shooting guard, and running a 6'8" point guard. 432 inches of basketball gimmick. And it took all of this to narrowly win the game thanks to a half-court buzzer beater. Yes, everything you just heard actually happened. Of course, this lineup was never seen again, and the big ball strategy was for nothing more than to merely grab some attention. The Nighthawks knew all along going overboard on the size was never a real viable strategy. It didn't grant them an edge over their opponent, and the idea of just feeding their big men easy buckets under the hoop was as far-fetched in reality as it was in theory. But the Nighthawks aren't the only team to give the big ball strategy a shot. In 1999, during the last game of the season, the Dallas Mavericks decided to start the game with a 5-man lineup that consisted of 3 7-footers, one of them being the tallest player in the NBA. 414 inches of lineup and an average height of 6'11", which goes down as the biggest starting five in NBA history. They ended up losing the game by double digits, their experiment was a dud, and this lineup was never seen again. In 2020, the Denver Nuggets tried a big ball lineup of their own in a scrimmage against the Washington Wizards, a starting five that had an average height of nearly 6'11", with a 7-footer running the point and a 7'3" giant at small forward. Why exactly did they do this, you might ask? Well, we're not really sure. It made no sense and was nothing more than a gimmick for a meaningless game. Ironically, the Nuggets somehow lost the tip-off and their experiment lasted only 6 minutes. The result of which was a measly 10 points, big guys living out their lifelong dream of playing on the perimeter, and a tied game against a Wizards team missing 3 of their best players. This lineup wasn't much of a success and was never seen again, because turns out having a team exclusively full of giants is not as great of an idea as it sounds. With how big some NBA players are, it is a miracle that they can shuffle their feet, react quickly, and maneuver around the court with the best athletes in the world at all, even if they may struggle in the process. It gets to a point where excess height tends to introduce bigger trade-offs than benefits. More mass to move, longer levers to control, smaller margins for balance and touch. The rare talents who defy that don't just add inches, they carry those inches. Studies have shown that the negative effects of excess height, joint degeneration, spinal issues, cardiovascular strain, can begin to take effect in individuals just 6'8" or taller. Every inch above that, and the drawbacks become more and more pronounced. By 7'3", health issues aren't just expected, they are virtually inevitable.
The NBA on ESPN is happening now. We don't know who's gonna catch fire or who will shock the world, but we do know that for opening week, Christmas, finals, and everywhere in between, there's one place to call home. Stop playing with me.
See how I use Creative Cloud Pro to take my design projects to the next level. I use Adobe Illustrator's new AI tools to create graphics, Generative Fill to add in interesting details, and Generative Expand to make it a full-size illustration. And that's it.
There has been only 28 players who were 7'3" or taller in NBA history. 28 out of over 5,000 players who have ever touched an NBA court. Out of these 28, 11 of them didn't even play a full season worth of games. Players that were short-term projects that just didn't pan out. And out of the 17 that did, 8 of them were forced to retire due to injury or a combination of multiple injuries, which leaves 9. 9 players in the history of the NBA who were mobile and skilled enough to play against the best players in the world while remaining healthy enough to stay on the court. Why don't NBA teams just get the largest human beings on the planet and take advantage of their size? Well, they do. It's just extremely, incredibly rare to find an individual who meets the requirements. In other words, players like Manute Bol, George Mirasan, Yao Ming, Victor Wembanyama are not just pushing the limits of how tall you can be to play basketball. They are at the boundary of how tall a person can be without medical intervention. The fact that these guys were able to move around without pain and live normal lives at all is astonishing. Add in a strict physical regimen, getting up and down a basketball court for an entire career, and keeping up with some of the best athletes in the world. And these guys are physical anomalies who have defied biomechanical expectations. How tall can a basketball player possibly be? Well, look around courts all over the world, and you'll get your answer. Online, there is a list of the tallest people in the world. Now, this list doesn't include every single extremely tall person, but it does include everyone over 7'3" that has been officially measured and verified. And among all of these individuals, 87 of them are alive today. 87 human beings across the entire planet who are officially at least 7 feet 3 inches tall. Of these 87 people, 49 of them have played or are currently playing professional basketball. That is 57%, meaning that the majority of giants alive today were at one point or are currently pro basketball players. Even crazier, 27 of them played or are currently playing in the NBA. But here's where it gets really interesting. Of these 49 pro basketball players, none of them were taller than 7'9", and 45 of them, the vast majority, were 7 feet 7 inches or shorter. Again, this seems to be the absolute limit of how tall a basketball player can truly be. Because if we reduce this list to the people who are between 7'3" and 7'7", then 71% of them have played professional basketball at some point in their life. 71%! And 43% have played in the NBA. So if you aren't really tall, your chances of becoming a pro basketball player are pretty slim. And if you're too tall, your chances aren't much better. But if you're in this Goldilocks zone, where you have an abundance of size without being debilitating, you are essentially a shoo-in as a pro basketball player. Can a person be too tall to play basketball? Well, technically, no. But as of right now, and from everything that we've seen, there appears to be a practical limit at about 7 feet 8 inches tall. So, yeah, in theory, you could just plant a mega giant near the rim, feed him the ball, and give your team the most unstoppable advantage the sport has to offer. You just have to go out and find a mega giant good enough to compete and healthy enough to not completely fall apart on the court. Good luck with that.
That's crazy. That was a crazy video, bro. So basically, like, the cap is at 7, I think it was 7'7"? Yeah, 7'7". Basic, technically. That's crazy, bro. But, wow. That was a crazy video, man. But anyways, man, if you guys are new here, please hit the subscribe button. And if you guys enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. Hey!